Hey Josh, welcome and thanks for doing this for us. We have a Member Monday series that we're trying to connect people virtually as we learn about each other, even though we're not as active or as together as we are accustomed to being. And we hope that this pandemic is over as soon as possible. But we get a chance to be more familiar with one another in the congregation. So how are you doing today?
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. I'm doing real well, and thank you for the interview. And I'm, looking forward to it.
Good,
So,
good. Good. Well, a good early Shabbos to you as well. This is the day that we are recording and hope to have it out there on Mondays, Member Mondays. So, Josh, if you could tell us a little bit about what it's like to kind of grow up in Richmond and to be a Jewish boy here, growing up in our community and our city, and what that experience was like for you.
well, I think I, may have had a different experience. I mean, feel like I grew up in Richmond a lot. I mean, I'm originally from New York City, which is probably the, other than Eretz Israel, is probably the, kind of Mecca, or I shouldn't say Mecca, but, center of Jewish life in the world. But I would always, my grandparents lived here in Richmond, and I would always visit them on the holidays, my mother and myself. And during the summer we would come and visit. Any opportunity that we had to spend with them, we would come down to Virginia. And during that time, my grandfather, he belonged to several synagogues in Richmond, and he felt comfortable praying and worshiping in all the synagogues.
Right.
And he would be around, and everybody was very welcoming to me. And like my grandfather, I mean, I just have great memories of Kol Emes, which is sadly no longer. I mean, the building is there, but the congregation is kind of absorbed by KBI. So, I remember.
You can say Mecca. We can joke around because this is the first program of the month of Adar. So there's supposed to be some a little bit of extra happiness, maybe levity on some level. But did you attend the day school here at all when you were younger, the RTA?
I did not attend RTA. I knew I was friendly with a lot of people who did, but I didn't have an opportunity to attend RTA.
Yeah,
but
I know you have a close relationship with the alumni. Josh, for some people who are relatively new to the area or just haven't been here for too long, if you kind of made reference to your grandfather, if you could tell people a little bit about who he was and what he accomplished professionally, personally, I think he played a big role in the development here of the community.
Yeah, of course. My grandfather, Larry Sterling, and my grandmother, Deborah Sterling, were machers in the community here in Richmond. My grandfather actually secured some of the first loans to build some of the synagogues in town. He was a lifelong member of Bethel and I believe KBI and Ortid. He was one of the founding families there. My grandfather also helped to build the JCC. He was a real estate developer for about 60 years of his life. He built, over 1,000 homes around Richmond. And he was always, the Jewish community was very important to him. And, he was always included with, some of the leaders of the community. When decisions were being made, they would always consult him. And I remember rabbis always visiting him at home and different members of the community. So, like many of the people who have, my grandfather is now passed on, but, there were a lot of great, important men, in Richmond at that time, during those times in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, all the way up till now.
Yeah.
So
So how was he able to do that? Because your mother has a similar legacy, and I know you're a pretty modest person, but you've continued that. There seems to be this giving in your family, and this philanthropy that he was able to pass on, and it didn't just stop with him. It continued on to subsequent generations as well. So how do you think he was able to accomplish that as part of the philosophy of the family, so to speak?
well, yeah, my grandfather, he grew up in what is today he was born in what is today the Ukraine, and he immigrated to this country with his family. I mean, they were escaping religious persecution. And he, always, family and community was always very important to him. And he always stressed that in every conversation that I remember with him. He would always talk about the Jewish community. He would always talk about Israel, and the way, my family honors his memory and my grandmother's memory, and the other ancestors have been, supporting the synagogues and the institutions in Richmond. So Jewish learning was very important to him, and Jewish young Jewish people getting an education, and Yiddishkeit, carrying on that legacy, to their families. So, these were all things that, were very important to him. And, as he got older, he, became even more important to him. And he wanted to, make sure that he had a legacy and that we remembered, where we came from as a family and as Jewish people. Um, and,
Yeah, I know you're very proud of him. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about how the company got started, and where it is now, and a little bit about about the company.
Absolutely. The company is, this year is our 75th anniversary of
Wow.
being. The company was started in 1946. My grandfather, I mean, I'm sure I'm leaving parts out, but he when his family immigrated to this country, they started out, they lived in Baltimore, and they were in the table pad business. And you probably think, well, what's a table pad? I mean, people of a certain age can know. And certainly if you have a large family and you're serving a lot of dishes, there's like a cover that goes over the table so it doesn't get damaged, and then the tablecloth goes onto that. Well, my family had a factory in Baltimore, and that's where he worked for many years. um, he was in he was in the Army Air Corps during World War II. Had a he washed out, had a terrible accident, almost died. And then when he came back from, I guess he was doing some training with other people, um, training other soldiers, and he would traveled around the country for a time. When he came back, my grandmother's family lived here in Richmond, and he decided to come here and try his hand at becoming a realtor, because there were so many GIs coming back from the war. I mean, this is how a lot of Jewish families, there are a lot of Jewish families in town that have kind of started this way. But he came back and became a realtor, sold homes at first, and then started developing his own properties. And he had an amazing career. I think it was about 60. He's at least 60 years career in, or 50 plus year career in real estate. He was very proud of that. He, you wouldn't know by looking at him. I mean, he always looked like he was a important man, but he was kind of a modest person, and never really tried to be
And how is the company? How is it kind of developed, and where is it at right now, in terms of what it's become?
Well, fortunately, we're still in business. It was shaky there for a few years because, obviously there was a transition after my grandmother passed away, and then my mother retired and I took over. But, he built several apartments.
Um,
Hello? Sorry.
I lost you there
Oh,
for
did I?
a second. Sorry, we lost it. He built what? You said he built several.
As someone who's trying to call me, but yeah, he built several complexes um, that we still manage. And, you know, I wanted to kind of follow in that legacy. I've built several apartment complexes and some single family home in Richmond.
Are
You
there
know,
any projects that you're most proud of all the different projects that the company has kind of been involved in?
um, well, you know, there's some that I did, some that my grandfather did. I mean, my grandfather built the what was the Holiday Inn Koger Center off of Midlothian Turnpike, which is still I think today it's a DoubleTree, but today it's still the tallest building in Chesterfield County. So I forgot to mention that. I mean, my grandfather was also very proud. He built another hotel that we no longer manage in Williamsburg, where actually KBI.
Yes, I've heard about that. And
Yeah, I
yeah,
think that was you a rabbi there, um, rabbi. But yeah, and those were very popular. He was very proud of that. Me personally, I um, renovated. Uh, it's called the New East End Theater. It's 22 apartments in a commercial space. It's located in Churchill.
mhm.
That's probably my proudest achievement. That was a real labor of love, I guess. You know, what do you?
Such an important area. Yeah, it's a very important area for us for locally. So I'm sure you're very proud of that. What's it like being a part of a family business as opposed to some of your colleagues and some of your associates who are not part of a company with that kind of culture? So tell us a bit about what it's like to be part of a family business.
Well, obviously, there's a different dynamic when you're working with your family. Uh, it's it depends. I mean, some people go into the family business, other people go out and strike out on their own. With my family, I think I was always treated as an equal. Like I had an equal kind of say, and this is from when I was even
Right. You're going
like, I mean, I'm talking like 5 or 6 years old. That my family valued my opinion, and that really meant a lot to me, and it really shaped the man I am today. I mean, obviously there are other things that have shaped that, but
yeah.
that was kind of the start. Able to kind of think logically about things, and talk on an adult level, and that really helped me.
You're going in and out a little bit.
To myself. So to even be able to run this company, because I got my degree in history, from VCU. But and obviously you're like, well, what's history have to do with the company? But in a way it does, because I have a family legacy. I have historic properties that I'm dealing with. So I made a way, to kind of take some of what I'm also interested in, and apply it to the business. So
Right.
obviously I was given a lot of trust in running the company, and I've been running it now for about 5 years.
Mhm.
So I'm
That is very interesting, the way that you describe how kind of having studied history and taking part in a very historic city and the continuous development of that city. That is very interesting. Now, transitioning a little bit, because as you talked about when you were 5 or 6, or the impact that this had on you, I know that you also had a very significant mentor and Rabbi Schulman, who was not a predecessor of mine in Beth Israel, but he was a very significant rabbi here in Richmond for many families. I guess if you can kind of speak to that relationship a little bit. It's not every day that you come across somebody who maintains a relationship over the course of decades now with their rabbi, or with a personal rabbi that they're close with. So if you can talk a little bit about that relationship.
oh, sorry, Rabbi, I
You're cutting in and out a little bit.
Yeah, well, can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you now.
Rabbi Shulman has been very influential in my life, and I'm a secular Jew. I'm not Hasidic. I'm not Orthodox. Maybe I'm teetering on Orthodoxy, but my relationship with Rabbi Shulman and all the, he really. That was really important to me. I mean, my parents were divorced, and I always was, I've had my own, looking for different people to kind of fill the father figure void, without getting too personal, but, always looked to him as a friend and a mentor. So, life and especially their spiritual journey through life. I mean, maybe I'm not doing everything, that Rabbi Shulman, has instructed me or I've learned. Obviously, I've, applied a lot of what he has taught me, and I've kept a relationship with, several of his children. And, it's a really meaningful relationship for me. So,
that's really neat. That's really neat. I guess, maybe if you can speak about New York City versus Richmond a little bit, what do you appreciate about being here in Richmond? What do you miss about New York? And then I guess when you're in New York, what do you miss about being in Richmond? If that question makes any sense.
Yeah. There are great people in both cities, and it's different experiences in both cities. I mean, obviously in New York, you have neighborhoods where there are thousands of Jews, and every store is a Jewish, business. There's Hebrew writing everywhere. The neighborhood that I grew up in, the Upper West Side, was another kind of Jewish enclave in New York. It's the community in Richmond is a lot smaller, but I think it's sometimes easier to operate in a smaller community. I mean, I think in New York you have are, extremely wealthy and have huge families. And I mean, it's similar here, but it's a little bit difficult to kind of break into that, not break in, but, relate to some of the people because they're just so, kind of on a different, they're operating in a whole nother plane, it seems like. I mean, you might see them at synagogue, but you probably don't socialize with them, kind of thing.
Right.
Or, it's a little bit difficult to make connections sometimes. I'm not married, I don't have children. So,
Yeah.
I think that helps a lot in both communities. I guess for me, not a lot of secular Jews will go to Orthodox or Lubavitch or Hasidic services. I feel comfortable in all of those. And I've prayed in all of them. And I think it's for some more observant Jews, it's kind of like, well, what is he doing here? Who is this guy? Who, is he Jewish or whatever? And I, kind of welcome some of that conversation and always, I think people here in Richmond are a little more conservative than New York. The Jews in New York are extremely liberal, which there's nothing wrong with, but, my grandfather, I guess, described it as, being a citizen of the world. Are you Jewish? Are you a citizen of the world? Is what he would ask people, when they were a little bit too left. So, but I've stayed connected to both communities. I, I'm on my own spiritual journey, and I'm still yet to kind of find that fit. But I'm still on that journey. So
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll speak to you about that just for a moment. What's it like being a landlord here in Richmond with tenants? You're Jewish, and just generally the responsibility of being a landlord and knowing that people's roofs over their head are partially your responsibility. And so, what's it like to be a landlord and to live with that responsibility? And what's it like to be a Jewish landlord in a city that where we are a exceptionally significant minority in terms of our small size percentage wise compared to the overall population?
yeah, well, I think it's my name is on the company, so it's a little bit harder for me to kind of hide out, or not hide, but I mean, the name is Sterling Management. Everyone knows. I mean, I'm Joshua Bilder, but everyone kind of knows I'm also Mr. Sterling too. So I think I feel a little bit more responsible because my name is on the company, and it's my brand, I guess you'd say.
Hmm.
May look a certain way, but yeah, I mean, oh, whoops.
No, no, don't worry. Keep going. I'm having some trouble hearing you, so I'm going to try this for a little bit.
Yeah, well, no, I would just say that, everyone brings their own kind of ideas to meeting someone, or, like, I don't kind of explain that I'm Jewish. I mean, for one thing, a lot of response that I get is, "Oh, I didn't know you were, Jewish," or "Oh," like it's almost like here, it's like, "Oh, like, how long have you had that problem?" kind of thing.
Okay.
Like
Right.
that.
Okay.
Meaning that I think, a lot of people here are curious about Jews because they're not exposed to it, or Jewish people. But for someone to call me white, or whatever, I mean, honestly, that's I mean, yeah, I am white, but I'm Jewish, and I think that is a little different than being your average WASP. you
Right.
know
That,
People.
that makes sense. Well, what would be one real estate tip, since you're in the real estate business? What would be one piece of advice that you would give the average American that maybe they don't realize about real estate, or maybe about investing in real estate, or any of the above, really, um, having the inside perspective that you have for people who might not know that much about the real estate business?
Don't do it. Stay out of it. I don't need any competition. No,
Right.
I would say that you really have to start with the numbers. There's a lot of real estate get rich quick kind of schemes. You know, unless there are some of those cases out there where that has happened, but you really have to start with the numbers. Any deal that you get into, you got to, even if it's a back of the envelope or some kind of spreadsheet, you really have to, get all your numbers in order, because you can really sabotage yourself if you're not going into the deal with eyes wide open. Um, I think television and commercials, they make the real estate industry, and I'm talking, I mean, I've been in this business 20 years already. So, and I'm talking from experience. If you don't have your numbers in order, you're not going to be successful. And it's just that much harder. Every deal is hard unless you're, I don't want to say there are some extremely huge corporations in town that, are just churning these projects out and doing, it makes it seem seamless, and or flawless. But if you're an independent investor, a small business, you got to be extra careful. And you're dealing with a lot of money in these projects, and if you don't manage it properly, you can really lose everything. So I would just say, start with the numbers, get as much information as you can about the deal. And then if it looks good, you got to go through with it, because to get out of a deal is equally as hard sometimes.
Right.
So that's what I would.
That sounds like good advice. I guess lastly, before we close out the conversation here, what do you see from your perspective? You know, I don't. It's not a secret. I think it's very nice. You have this vision for the city of Richmond. You've been in the newspaper sharing some of that vision a little bit, but and I think it's all good, and it shows some outside the box thinking. But what do you think is the future of Richmond from your perspective in terms of, you know, North Carolina, Charlotte, some of these other cities, Raleigh, you know, they have developed in different ways. Richmond's different. It's its own city. But what do you kind of see? What's your hope? What I would say, what's your prediction? But I'd rather go with what's your hope for what can be accomplished and what to expect here in the next decade or two.
Well, I think, I think where Richmond, the charm of Richmond is that it's affordable for people. So I'm just concerned with all this development that Richmond is going to get too built up and too expensive, and it's going to kind of lose the charm that it has. I mean, that may or may not happen. I think, as far as the downtown, there's a danger of losing a lot of good businesses and good people to some of the counties. I think there's a lot of bureaucratic red tape in downtown. That there has to be a way to cut through that. But I'm positive on Richmond. I have made significant investments here. I mean, I see in the next 10 years, things only getting better here and more, diverse and built up. And, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know. I mean, the next 10 years, I don't know where I'll end up. I mean, the last 10 have been kind of a roller coaster ride, but, I just positivity, and, I see Richmond becoming almost like a suburb of DC.
Mm-hmm. If they got that high-speed train that they keep talking about. But, Josh, I really appreciate this perspective, because not many people are part of a company that's been around for 75 years here. It's really a special opportunity in many ways. Also to get your perspective on your grandfather's contributions here in the Jewish community. And beyond that, kind of the different roles that have been played in various Jewish organizations. And I know I speak for a lot of people. We love having you here, especially, the ones who are our age, or some of the RTA alumni. We share some of the good friends here in the synagogue. But wish you well, and wish you a hatzlacha rabbah, and thanks for doing this.
Yeah, and Rabbi, I just wanted to say that you're really, I mean, this community, you're a treasure to this community. And, having you here is, I mean, you're just such an asset to this community. You, your wife, your family. I mean, we're so here, and very few people will stand up for the Jewish community in the public forum. And you've done that. And, I'm just proud to have you as a friend and a rabbi.
Well, thank you. We always enjoy having you, and really appreciate those sentiments, those words. And best wishes, best regards. I hope to see you and everybody watching this in person as soon as possible. So thank you very much.
Hard.